Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today feels like a perfect day to talk about Tarzan and Jane's relationship. We all know the story of the 1999 Disney movie Tarzan. After a shipwreck leaves an English couple and their infant son stranded on the coast of Africa, they build a tree house to protect their family, but unfortunately they're unalived by a leopard. This leaves their baby orphaned. Kala, a kind female gorilla who has just lost her own baby to the same leopard, finds the orphan boy in the treehouse and adopts him as her son. Despite the initial resistance from her mate and the gorilla family, she refuses to abandon the child and names him Tarzan. Tarzan grows up in the jungle, learning to survive with the help of his adoptive gorilla family and animal friends. As he matures, he becomes curious about his past, and one day, he gets the chance to meet two humans, Jane Porter and her father, who are researchers on an expedition to study gorillas. Tarzan and Jane fall in love after swinging through the jungle on vines, and she and her father are eager to meet Tarzan's gorilla family. However, their tour guide Clayton has a secret agenda. While posing as a helpful guide, Clayton actually plans to hunt the gorillas and sell them on the black market. When Tarzan discovers Clayton's true intentions, he must use his wits and brute strength to protect his gorilla family from being captured and exploited. He now becomes torn between his loyalty to his gorilla family and his growing love for Jane. Tarzan initially decides to leave the jungle and go to England with her. However, he soon realizes that his true home is in the jungle with his gorilla family, and in the end, he defeats Clayton, saves his gorilla family, and Jane and her father decide to stay in the jungle with Tarzan, and they live happily ever after. The end. Now that we're all caught up, back to why I'm making this video. Have you ever considered the ethics of Tarzan and Jane's relationship? No? Nobody in the back? Well, I do. I think about it like once a year. So Tarzan grew up primarily with apes and had no human interaction until he met Jane and her father. That's 20 years of his life not speaking or communicating with words and having to adapt to apes and other animals. Although he's smart, he's not at the same mental level as Jane. In fact, it's wildly unrealistic that he would be able to learn how to speak English so clearly and be able to communicate so easily with Jane by the end of the film. Because he grew up without humans, he lost the quote-unquote critical period of language learning. Human development is heavily influenced by social interaction, language acquisition, and cultural experiences. Tarzan would be classified as a feral child. Those are children in the wild who grow up away from human contact and civilization. And so when I look at their relationship, I think about the fact that Jane fell in love with Tarzan when he's not at the mental, social, and emotional level as her. And of course, I know that this is a Disney movie and there's an obvious suspension of belief, but I can't help the way my mind works. I also know that Jane couldn't help but resist Tarzan, especially with his little skirt and him swinging from vine to vine. So back to when they first meet, he's more interested in her toes, her hands, and hearing her heartbeat. I can imagine how jarring that was for him after having no one that looks like him. Tarzan is basically involuntarily celibate, living a life with no crushes, no one to make his heart flutter, all while his gorilla family continue to fall in love and start families with each other. Their first interaction tells me that the social cues that he would need to form a socially accepted relationship with her would be next to impossible. The movie obviously speeds things up in terms of his development in the story, which makes sense because it's a Disney movie for kids and families. But now, let's look at what could hypothetically be their reality when they get together. There's obviously a huge power imbalance as Jane is not only a woman that he loves, but his teacher and the only access to the human world which he is very curious about. Her word, her opinions, and her lessons would be seen as definite and objectively true to him, so in the case where they argue or disagree, she would always have the upper hand because she's supposed to be an expert when it comes to human interactions and what's wrong and what's right. Then there's the case for consent because for consent to be valid, both parties must have a clear understanding of what exactly they're consenting to. Tarzan's understanding of human relationships would be limited, and there would be likely a significant power imbalance. with Jane having more knowledge and more experience. And I am aware that Jane is coming from the Victorian era of England, and as a woman, she would probably not know much about consent/intimacy. But again, that proves my point that if she has limited knowledge, then where does that leave Tarzan? Then we have to talk about their cohabitation. At the end of the movie, they both choose to stay in the jungle instead of going to England. And in the jungle, Tarzan does have a lot of power and expertise because it is his domain. He's more likely to be able to survive as compared to Jane, and Jane would have to heavily rely on him just as he relies on her to learn about civilized society. But just like his parents who built a treehouse and were able to kind of live separately from jungle life, until of course they were unalived by said jungle. But the same thing with Jane and her father, they set up a little camp/safe haven so that they could live separately as well. And I think that that would be out of Tarzan's comfort zone. I see them living in a more human dwelling, more to Jane's standards than Tarzan's, but he will not only struggle to get used to this because don't forget that he's about 20 years old in the movie and he does have learned behavior. I can see this as being a huge physical and psychological adjustment that I see more as rehabilitation rather than just a couple or newlyweds in case they get married living together. It will be very difficult for his learned habits to just end all of a sudden. And now that I've spoken so much, I'm beginning to believe that this video should have been about how they shouldn't get together and how it would be disastrous in the long term. But looking on the bright side, especially for Jane, she could literally mold Tarzan into her version of a perfect man who is tuned perfectly to her wants, needs, and habits. He will never be able to see her as too much or too little because he has nothing to compare her to. And I could say it was the same for him, but she could always leave the jungle and go back to her life in England, probably get remarried while he wouldn't have anywhere to go, and I don't see many other Victorian women lining up to be with him. At this point, I should probably go and watch the movie for a second time today because I watched it earlier today before making this video, and all I could think about when looking at their relationship is how this could be a potential ethical problem. But maybe when I watch it for a second time, I can watch it with more romance and less cynicism. And with that being said, this does bring me to the end of my video. Thank you so much for watching. I would love to know your thoughts down below and your opinion on the dynamics of their relationship, both good or bad or anything in between. And this has nothing to do with the topic, but I completely understand why Jane decided to stay behind. I completely understand why she decided to give everything up to live with him. You really have to put yourself in the time period. This was a time where you couldn't see a man's bare chest unless you were married. And so to go to the jungle expecting to just see apes and snakes and birds, and then to come across a specimen that was Tarzan, and Tarzan is a specimen. Face card is lethal, body is T. Again, he can swing through the vines in the jungle. I completely get her. And when Tarzan decided to stay behind and she was supposed to go back to England and then she changed her mind at the end, again, I wasn't surprised because she realized, I don't think I can find this anywhere. I don't think I can buy this at any store, especially not in England. And so I'm staying with you. And it's a good thing her dad decided to come along because I'm pretty sure if he decided to go back, she would have said, okay, bye, see you when I see ya. But anyways, this officially brings me to the end of my video. Like this video, subscribe. My new goal is to get to 400 subscribers. So if you enjoyed this video and would like more, please consider subscribing. Again, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll catch you in my next video.